All right, so the first round of the tournament, we just got the result. I'm probably gonna be like 5 minutes late, but I'm playing against this grandmaster. He's from Cuba. He actually won this tournament last year, so I know it's gonna be a tough game, but I'm gonna give it my best, and we're going for blood. I'll definitely show you guys the game. Peace. That was a crazy game. So I start off by playing the move e4. He played g6. I actually checked his game before and I saw that he was gonna play g6. And I played d4, he played bishop g7, and then I played knight c3. So here we're just developing our pieces, nothing fancy. And then he plays d6. Now, this is the modern defense, by the way. I played bishop e3, and then he played a6. Now, it looks like it's an unnecessary pawn move. Grandmasters, they like to play like this because grandmasters are lazy. They don't like to do opening preparation. So they say they like to play chess. That's their philosophy. So they're like, okay, I'm not going to be playing regular opening against this guy. I'm just going to play something weird and bring him somewhere where he doesn't know what he's doing, and then I'll win. That's how they think. But anyways, I played queen to d2, being the principled person that I am. And then he played b5, and then I castled my king. Now, his idea with a6, b5 was to play bishop to b7, and I have to be careful here because already he's threatening to play pawn to b4, which forces my knight away, and then I have to move the knight, and then his bishop would simply take this pawn on e4. So I played the move pawn to f3, guard my pawn. He plays knight to d7. He's developing his pieces. He's just doing it very weirdly. And then I played h4. Now, this h4 move, I actually checked a few of his games like 20 minutes before the round, and I saw a lot of persons playing h4 against him. Now, remember when I tell you guys about planning and pawn breaks? That's the purpose of this move. I want to play h5 with the whole idea of opening this file for my rook. And what I saw in his games is he plays h5 and then knight h3, knight f6, knight g5, and then that's just a very strong knight on the g5 square. Now, I don't know what happened. Maybe he knew that I checked his games, but he decided to play h6 instead of h5. And the whole idea of h6 is if I play h5, then he plays g5. Remember what I told you guys about responding to pawn storms? You have to ensure that you keep it closed. You don't want to be opening the board or allowing the opponent to get a foul. So taking on h5 would be a mistake because it allows my rook to get the open file. And remember, to take is a mistake. So I played king to b1 here. Now, king to b1 was like a waiting move, as you may say. I just wanted to see what my plans that my opponent was playing for. I wanted to see if he was going to play e5 or knight f6 or pawn e6. That's what I thought. So here he plays e6, and then I play d5. Now, a move like d5, persons may think this is a mistake. And by the way, I haven't checked the game. I really want you guys to critique this game and just let me know what you think about my thought process and let me know where you think I'm lacking because I really think I played well in this game. So I don't care if you're 400 or you're 2600. I really want to know what your opinion is. So I played the move pawn to d5. Now, a more principled move in this position would be maybe knight e2 to develop my knight. Definitely not a bishop move because putting the bishop on d3, it does develop the bishop, but it blocks the coordination of the rook and the queen. And putting the bishop on e2 doesn't necessarily develop the bishop because it doesn't really do much on e2. So I decided to play d5. Plus, the guy's king is in the center of the board. And if your opponent's king is in the center of the board, you want to open the center. Now, what I thought about was if he plays e5, now I'm able to play h5. And obviously, taking is bad. And then if he plays g5, it really weakens this f5 square. And then I could do something like knight e2, pawn g4, knight g3, and just lodge my knight into the f5 square. That was my idea. So, and obviously, if he decides to take, then my knight takes, and that's a very nice knight, and I'm just chilling here. So he decided to play knight to f6. The guy just decided. I was like, hey, let me just develop my knight. And keep in mind that the whole time I have to be worried about a move like pawn to b4. For example, if I just play a regular development move, knight e2, he hits me with pawn b4, forcing me to put my knight here, and then he takes here. I'm not 100% sure what the evaluation of this position is. Like, if I takes, he takes, but then if I takes, rook to b8, his rook is on the file, the bishop is pointing towards my king. That's a lot of drama. That's a lot of drama. So I was like, hey, let's just take the pawn. His e6 pawn is no weakness. His g6 pawn is no weakness. What is a weakness? A weakness is a pawn or a square that cannot be guarded by another pawn. So I was like, hey, I created the weakness. Now I'm going to target the weakness. So I hit him with the move knight to h3. And the whole idea of knight to h3 was to play knight to f4. So he plays queen e7 to defend the pawn. And I was like, nice. Yeah, the VM is defending. Yeah, that's how I felt here. And then I hit him with knight to f4. I felt I was doing fine here. I knew it was going to be a dynamic game. I knew it was going to be opposite side castles. We're both going to try to attack each other. And then he plays the move knight to e5. So the moment I put my knight on f4, he puts his knight on e5. So it's kind of hard to apply more pressure to this pawn, but I actually came up with a very nice plan. I was very proud of it. I was very proud of it. Now, after this knight e5 move, I decided to play pawn to a3. First of all, do not push pawns on the side that your king is on. If you push pawns on the side that your king is on, it creates a hook for the opponent to attack. For example, now he wants to play moves like pawn c5, pawn b4, takes, open the c file pointing towards my king. But the reason why I did this is if he plays a move like b4 and chase away my knight, I don't want to put my knight on e2 because knight c4 hits my queen and my bishop, and my bishop no longer covers the c4 square. And if he plays b4 and I put my knight on the edge of the board, then bishop to c6 in some lines, and that's not comfortable. So I was like, you know what? Let's play the prophylactic a3. And then he plays the move rook to d8. He immediately developed a plan to use the hook. Basically, what his idea is, he wants to play pawn c5 followed by pawn to b4. But if he plays c5 followed by b4, I take on d6 because of the drawback principle. So he decided to play the move rook to d8. And after rook to d8, this was where I found a very nice plan. Now, first of all, the guy's rook is on the same line as my queen. And we already know that you do not want to have your queen on the same line as the opponent's rook. Plus, I knew my plan was to attack his weaknesses. So g6 is weak, e6 is weak. What was the plan that I developed to target his weaknesses? First of all, I wanted to play rook h3 followed by rook to g3. This is called a rook lift, by the way. And the whole idea is to target the weak g6 pawn. But because my queen is on the same line as his rook, I decided to hit him with queen to f2. So I move my queen off the same line as the rook. I want to play queen to g3 to attack g6. So he decided to castle. I did play the move queen to g3. And then when he defended it, I played queen to h3. And then I target this weak pawn on e6. So hopefully you guys are able to understand, like just middle game plannings. Notice how planning has everything to do with pawns and what the structure is like. So here my opponent played rook to d8. Again, the GM is defending. I'm happy. I'm chilling. Here I decided to play bishop to e2 because I need to finish my development. Now, if I'm being honest here, like I really wanted to hit him with pawn to g4. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna attack this guy. For example, just show you guys just an example line. Let's say he plays c5, to play b4. I was gonna hit him with g5. And then if he takes, I takes, and then if the knight moves, my queen gets the h7 square. But it's not that easy because what I saw was if I hit him with g5, he plays knight to h7. Now maybe you're saying, okay, knight h7 is passive, he's defending, but my f3 pawn is weak. If I play g5, he plays h5. If I play h5, he plays g5. How am I going to make progress here? He's going to play c5 followed by b4. He has a plan. I don't really have a plan. So that's the reason why I did not play g4 and I decided to play bishop to e2 first. And, it's principled. I wanted to connect my rooks and I also was planning on doubling up on the d file if he tries to play c5. But then his next move surprised me. Pawn to d5. Now, I wasn't surprised in a way where like, okay, I wasn't expecting him to play pawn to d5, but I just did not see the move pawn to d5 like 3 moves, 4 moves ago. And if you're going to be playing in tournaments, you have to see what the breaks are 3, 4 moves ago. So he break in the center of the board, and now he has like his knight, his pawn, his other knight guarding, well, attacking the e4 pawn. So I had to take. And then after he takes back, all of a sudden, this rook
it's on the same line as my unprotected bishop. So obviously we have to do something about this, which is why I decided to play the move bishop to d4, centralizing my bishop. And I wasn't 100% sure what was happening here, but I was really proud of what happened next. Like, he played knight to f7, right? And the reason why he plays knight to d7 is he wants to play pawn to c5 to chase away my bishop, and then when I takes, he takes back, and then his pawns are so strong. And moving his knight was attacking my knight on f4. So I had to defend it here. So here I had two plans. I had the idea of playing knight to d3 to guard my knight, or play queen to g3 to guard my knight. So knight to d3, there was a lot happening here. Like, there is knight takes f3, but knight takes f3 should not work, I'm assuming. Knight takes f3. Again, I have not checked the engine. Like, if I check the engine, I'm not going to upload the game. That's the thing. So I want to upload it first. And if you guys are watching this, then it means I checked the engine after. So again, I really want you guys' opinion on how do you think I'm playing? Where do you think I'm lacking? Where do you think I go wrong? Because I mean, I'm trying to get better at this chess thing as well. So I decided to play the move queen to g3 to protect my knight, and then he played c5. So basically, how I felt here, I was like, oh shoot, he's gonna start his attack. Where is my attack? And by the way, for the persons, I like to say this in every video because all my students, they always like, I don't know what to plan in the middle game. Just look on the pawns, like use your pawns to create a plan. Anyways, he attacks my bishop. The whole time, I was actually thinking of taking this knight. And then after his knight takes, I gave up the bishop here. And I don't want to give up the bishop here in this position. I was thinking of maybe pulling my knight back to d3, but it was weird. The guy has the two bishops. So after c5, I decided to pull my bishop back to f2. So I guess my plan was not correct. Because when you're playing chess, you don't want to be moving the same piece more than once, even when you're out of the opening stage of the game. If you notice, like, for some reason, all his pieces just looks coordinated. His rooks, they look like it's doing something. So he plays d4. I was actually okay here. I was proud of bishop to f2. And I actually felt as if I should have played, like, pull my bishop back to g1, but that would have disconnected my rooks. But you'll see why. You'll see why. So bishop to f2, pawn to d4, obviously knight to d4. I'm threatening to fork on d6, so he had to give up his bishop for a knight. And then after I takes, he plays knight to f6. And then now he's basically targeting my weak e4 pawn. Now, after knight to f6, I played bishop to f3, just guarding my pawn. And if he ever tries to take, I'm just going to take with the pawn. My rook gets the file. There's nothing here. And I'm not really afraid of these pawns marching up the board. So he decided after the move bishop to f3, he plays rook to f8. That was a nice move. He moves his rook to f8 because my knight, my bishop, my other bishop is on the same line. And he basically wants to take on f3, use his other knight to attack f3, and then use his queen to take on f3. And this is where I was like, okay, maybe this bishop should have been on g1. So I played knight to d3. Now the guy's attacking me. I'm trying to neutralize the attackers, basically. So he pulls his knight back. And by the way, I want you guys to notice how I'm always saying to take is a mistake, but no, I'm just doing a lot of taking. That's weird. But let's see. I played rook to g1. Now rook to g1 looks like a weird move. I thought rook to g1 was a weird move, but here's my idea. Once he pulls his knight back to d7, he's threatening with three of his pieces to take on f3. If I move my bishop to e2, he's just going to win a piece without removing the guard tactic. Take my knight, and then once I takes back, he takes on f2. So I was like, okay, I have to be careful here. So I played rook to g1 with the whole idea of if he thinks he's winning a pawn, he's actually just helping me to get this open file. And if his queen takes, I take. And then I'm now attacking him, and then I'm attacking his bishop on g7. So after g1, he took, I took, and then he played knight to e5. So he's attacking my rook again, and then he's also attacking my bishop. And this was where I think he messed up here because I pulled my rook back to d1. The moment I pulled my rook back to d1, I actually thought I should have played rook to d2. I did not play rook to d2 because I was afraid of knight c4. But if he plays knight c4, I just need to put my rook back on d3 in this position. So I pull my rook back to d1, and then he plays pawn to d3. Yeah, it was getting very hot here. This was what, yeah, it was getting very hot. Like, I had to think a lot in this position because if I touch this pawn, his knight is going to take, and then my b2 pawn is under attack two times. His queen is going to come to b3, and then he's just going to be attacking me. For example, I saw a line where if rook to d2, I think he still takes on b2. And if I takes, his bishop takes. If my king takes, he checks, and this will lead to a checkmate. Like, I move my king, his queen swoops in, and then I'm gonna lose the game. So after pawn to d3, I did not take. I decided to play the move rook to c1 with the whole idea of if he takes, I takes, and then I'm attacking this pawn. I thought he would have played c4 and then tried to play knight to d3. But he actually played pawn to d2, and it looks as if he's winning, but I think this was a mistake. And again, I do not know what's happening. I haven't checked the engine. I want you guys to critique how I think about the game before I check the engine and see what was actually happening. So I move my rook to d1. He plays knight to c4, and b2 is under attack. I do not want to be passive and play pawn to c3. Because if I play pawn c3, he's going to play knight takes a3 check. Pawn takes a3, queen to g3 check. My king has to go here. Bishop takes c3, and that's a checkmate. So I actually just ignore the fact that my b2 pawn was hanging. And then I just took on c5 and attack his rook. And then he took my pawn on b2. And in this position, remember what I told you guys about neutralizing pieces on your half of the board? There are no two pieces on my half of the board. His rook is hanging. But I didn't even consider taking his rook in this position because he has too many compensation. Queen takes, he's going to play queen takes a3, queen to a1. Wait, do I have queen takes, king over? Okay, that's weird. Maybe I was winning. Maybe I missed that move. Or maybe he just needs to play king takes. Like, he's not in any rush. Or even rook takes. Like, even though I'm winning, my rooks are tied up. My bishop is not doing anything. So I played bishop back to e2. I'm now neutralizing pieces. And then he pulls his bishop back to e5. Now, this is the critical point in the game. I really want you guys to tell me exactly how would you approach this position if you were playing with the white pieces? What would you have thought about? What would you have done? Because personally, I thought my king was unsafe, which it is. It's not safe. His king, not the safest, but I have some pressure on his g6 pawn. I had two candidate moves here. Two candidate moves. Take his knight on c4 or move my queen to b3. Now, if I move my queen to b3, I'm basically deciding that, hey, I'm going to keep the queens on the board. I'm attacking his rook. I was thinking of some lines he could play where he sacrifices rook, but let's say he decided not to sack his rook and move. I was thinking of, okay, now I play rook to f1, I'm attacking his queen, but then this pawn was too annoying. I was also thinking of moves like pawn to h5, and if he plays g5, bishop to g4, bishop to f5, bishop to g6 ideas. But I was like, shit, the guy's attacking my king. This is a chance to get the queens off the board and to trade some pieces off the board. Bishop takes knight. By the way, if he takes my bishop with his queen or his pawn, he's going to lose a bishop and I'm actually going to win the game. So he had to take my queen. I took his queen. He took my bishop. And this was the end game that I decided to go in. And then I pulled my bishop back to e3 and I'm like, okay, I'm hitting this, I'm hitting this. Yes, he's attacking this, but I'm going to take this, and the position is probably going to be a draw, and we're going to shake hands and go home. But the guy played bishop to f2. I completely missed bishop to f2 because my rook is now under attack. If I take this pawn, his rook takes, I takes, he takes a rook, and he's now just winning. And if I take his bishop, which I did, he took, no, his pieces are just way more active. And I played pawn to c3 with the whole idea of getting my king here, ganging up on this pawn, but he actually just played the simple rook to e2. He's attacking my pawn on e4. I do not have good ways to guard the pawn. So I played king c2. He took the pawn. I took his pawn. Then he took my rook. I took his rook. He took my pawn. And we're just now in an endgame, but I'm down by a pawn. The thing is, though, in rook endgames, it's usually drawable, if that's a word. I don't know, but I think my pawns are too weak in this position. Like, I have no pawns close to each other. And I played g4 here. I don't know what I was thinking. G4 is like the worst move because when you're in the end game, you should not move your pawns. Like pawn moves are crucial in the end game. And by moving my pawn, I move my pawn closer towards his pieces. I move my pawn somewhere where his rook was attacking. But my whole idea was to try to get my king towards his pawns. So after g4, he's not getting his king in the game. Like he's not just going for my pawn. I got my king in the game. He got his king in the game. And keep in mind, King f4 is not good here. He's still going to play h5. My pawn is pinned. He's going to take the pawn. And even if I try to, let's say I trade the pieces off the board like this is just losing. He's going to run to my pawn. I have to take this. And it's just the fox and the chicken coop technique. Hopefully you know that technique. So here, I played a4, which was also a terrible move. I think my endgame is rubbish, actually. I think I'm terrible at the endgame. And maybe you guys are saying, why did you give him a free pawn? Which is a good question. But I was not seeing how to make progress here. So I pushed, he took the free pawn, and then I played king to d4. And my whole plan in this position was to start advancing my pawn. So he pushed g5. I moved my king out of the pin. He took the pawn. Obviously, I can't trade here because if I trade, he takes, I push, he push, I push, he push, I push, he queen, I push, and then I'm losing. So I checked his king, then I pushed the pawn, but his pass pawn is just closer. He pushed his pass pawn, I pushed mine, he pushed his, and then I played king up. Because if I push the pawn here, he just checks my king. Now I have to go back, and then his king goes here, and then I'm losing. So I got my king up first, and then he pushed the other pass pawn. Now after he pushed his pawn, I played king to b7, which was just bad. I mean, I should have at least played king c7, trying to push my pawn to c6. But after king to b7, he checks. Then I had to go to c7. And then after he plays rook to b1, I decided to resign. Now, I want you guys to just, let me know where I went wrong. How could I have improved the position? And how I can get better at chess. Peace.